Hello and welcome everyone to the Schmoeville After Show, the official after show of all things Schmoes Know and Collider Video. I'm your host, Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian David S. And it was a big week for the SPR experience. However, I'm already lamenting the loss of the pit boss's ponytail.
It was also a big week for you because you're coming off of the hype of the Season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead. Is that correct?
God, you had to go there already, Snelling.
And you know what?
I think I'm out, man. I really do.
You know what? There's going to be a second episode tonight, and I'm sure you're gearing up for that as well. Everyone knows I am. If you're following me on Twitter, I'm literally hate watching that entire show right now. And Brian made me realize that I'm aimlessly doing it without purpose, but hey, I'm bored. I figured I'd catch up on some Walking Dead and see what everybody's talking about.
Meanwhile, you still haven't seen Battlestar Galactica, Katie Sackhoff's finest work, which would make you feel even more connected to the fact that she was once on this show. You would understand the significance of how amazing it was to have her on this show after she did such amazing work on BSG. I can't believe you.
Oh, you want to bring that up now?
Yes, since you brought up Walking Dead out of nowhere.
Sure. Okay. So I actually did some polling here because you were making fun of me, and I forgot to pull it up, but I'll bring it up here. I did a poll in the Schmoeville Facebook group because you made me feel a little bit bad about myself for not having seen the show, and you also put me in. I think your wording was that I'm in the minority, like as if most people had seen. No. You made me feel inadequate to be a Schmoes Know fan and not have seen the show. So I did a poll in the Schmoeville Facebook group, Brian, and you might be surprised what the results are. So I put my choices were seen the whole series, I've watched most of the series, couple of episodes, and none of it. On top, 235 voters have not seen Battlestar Galactica. Number 2, with 107 votes, they've seen the whole series. So more than double have not seen it as opposed to have seen it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, anyone who's old school, who's been around since Phase 3 or before that, I guarantee has seen it, because the fact that she was on this very show, Schmoes Know, after this career highlight, this amazing work that she did as one of the greatest characters on television, one of the greatest female characters on television, the fact that she would actually do this very show is so special, and yet so many of you do not understand the significance of that show or her work, and I'm ashamed.
Well, I found out, and you might be a little bit depressed, don't lie, but I found out that the entire series is on Hulu right now, so I'm going to start watching it, and I will report back weekly with my thoughts on the show, but very briefly, because Kristian does not want to hear any TV or movie discussion on this podcast, which is totally fine. Twitter results, I had 48 voters, 65% have seen none of it, 23% have seen the entire series, 10% a couple of episodes. So
that doesn't change the fact that it's a better show than The Walking Dead. It's on more top 10 lists of all time than The Walking Dead will ever be when it's done in season 15 or 16.
We are not getting into that, but I am ready to start the show. I figured we'd kick it off with Brian's clarification corner. How about it, Brian?
Yes, folks, I know Michael Bay did not direct Con Air. I knew that Con Air was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, and when I think of Bruckheimer, I automatically think of Michael Bay, since Bruckheimer and Bay used to be thick as thieves. Jerry produced Bad Boys, both of them actually, Armageddon, The Rock, Pearl Harbor, and so Con Air was essentially a Michael Bay film without being one, since Bay was finishing The Rock at the same time that Con Air began production. Con Air director Simon West even used Bay's saturation levels as well as his patented low-angle shots, on top of another absurd action premise like Bay was and is known to do. Con Air even used familiar actors, including Nick Cage, who was just in Bay and Bruckheimer's The Rock a year before Con Air. However, I must stress that I was making a bigger point in all this, and that overall point still stands. once RB3 catches up on the over-the-top Michael Bay brand action films from the 90s to the early 2000s, he'll be unbeatable in the Schmoedown. So I wish people would recognize the actual point I was making, which was to give a vote of confidence to RB3 and his Schmoedown future. Instead of recognizing that sentiment, an inconsequential detail that was beside my point became the focus. RB3 and I later talked about this on Twitter, and on top of Armageddon and Con Air being his movie blind spots, he's behind on films like Cliffhanger and Under Siege. So once again, if he catches up on the over-the-top action films of that era, he'll be untouchable because he knows the classics, even a few musicals. And that's where he can make fighters like Magic Hat Makuga really pay.
That was like the talk of the town last week. So many people commented on our video just to correct that point that you had made. And I forgot that you even mentioned it. So, I mean, I like that people are on their toes, but at the same time, I feel like people could have just glossed over that because I understand why you made the mistake. And most people will know, since you're a know-it-all, that you would have actually known the truth. So, just a misstep, but that's fine. What else do you got on the list?
Secondly, I mistakenly said that Terminator Judgment Day came out in 1992, not 1991, even though I remember when and where I saw that movie. I was in Chicago. It was the summer going into first grade. But once again, I was penalized even though I was trying to defend Cobster's inexplicably bad guess that the Terminator came out in 1990. So once again, a positive act turned into me being put on trial for a harmless mistake.
It's okay, man. I mean, we were making fun of Cobster.
I was defending the guy.
Well, I was making fun of him. I was making fun of Cobster. It's fine. I was actually upset with this next one because it's something that I could have pointed out, and I don't know if I was spacing out or maybe doing my fake laugh, but did I tell you about that? So someone in the live chat accused me of fake laughing on this podcast. Anyway, I might have been doing my fake laughing, but saying that Ken Knapsack did Force Center for Screen Junkies, I should have been able to correct that. So that's on me, guys. My apologies.
The engine's running, but there's no one behind the wheel. So yeah, Ken Knapsack's Star Wars podcast, Force Center, that he hosts with Scrimshaw and Jen Lenda Calrissian, is not a part of Screen Junkies. I thought it was, since he left Jedi Alliance around the same time that he moved over to Screen Junkies. Plus, people were asking him if he was still doing Force Center once the news dropped that he was leaving Screen Junkies. This was before the Collider stuff came out. His reply was that he would always do Force Center. So this was just oversight on my part. Again, Snelling, if you would finally provide me logins to Screen Junkies Plus, which you don't seem to use, these mistakes simply wouldn't happen. Follow Force Center Podcast at Force Center Pod on Twitter.
Why do you have to rely on my account? Why don't you just get it yourself? Why does it have to be my account?
Because you're the bigger fan than I am, and I want to give it a shot first before I invest my $5 per month.
Well, maybe if you weren't so mean to me off air, that's what's keeping me from giving you my login. We have to build.
I asked you the first 2 weeks I was on this show, and I was being super nice to you, and you still said no. Actually, you didn't respond at all.
I'm glad I said no, because then later on I would have regretted it. Now, we have to build some trust between us before I can just give you my login, okay? Only my close friends can have my logins. So just keep working at it. I mean, I believe that you'll get it one day, but just keep
look, with Kenny no longer a part of Screen Junkies, there's really no reason for me to check it out anymore. Hey. My interest is waning as we speak, and
hey. You forgot Roxy Stryer hosts TV fights. That's
Roxy
all the reason
Star?
in the world. Roxy Star, excuse me. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, but with Ken no longer being wasted on the couch, I don't think I'd be interested in TV fights like I would be with him being wasted on the couch.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, you got one more here?
And lastly, I'm well aware that no answers in the Schmoedown speed rounds cost a point. I simply don't like no answers and wrong answers being valued the same if you buzzed in first. I want the first person with an answer to buzz in, not the first person to buzz in who then thinks of an answer. Thus, there should be an opportunity for the opponent to steal if somebody buzzes in first without an answer. The quickest route to the right answer should always be the goal, not the quickest to draw a non-answer, wrong answer, or bad guess.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Chris Galicki might, but we need to get him on the show. I'd love to hear you two talk about the ways that Schmoedown could improve.
Don't get me started on that. But some people thought that I didn't understand that a no answer also cost a point. I totally understood that. I just didn't like that they were treated the same as wrong answers. So
sure.
One more point. Last week I accidentally said the top 10 show never worked for me, and just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean I don't understand why it didn't work for other people. I meant to say just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean I don't understand why it did work for other people. I've never once questioned the quality of the show or the host doing it. The show just failed to work with me because it failed to engage me the same way that the 7fave hashtag engaged the entire world. So if something down the road compels me to make my own list every week just to see how it stacks up to theirs, I'm all in, since Matt Nost impresses me more and more each week.
Sure. And since we don't have top 10 to talk about this week, I just want to mention that Campia, did a Facebook Live video, and he sort of addressed top 10, but it was basically restating what Roca and Nost had said in their announcement. And if you recall what I said last week, I thought that it was a full-blown cancellation, and they were just trying to cover it up. But I hate to say that because John Campia say it now I believe it, but unfortunately that is the case. Now that I've heard Campia say it, going back on what I said, they will be back in some form, and of course we speculated on that a little bit last week, but I'm confident, and I watch Top 10 every week. I will watch it when it comes out, however they decide to do it when it returns, so yeah, there's that.
Lastly, times two, I know people will always jump on us for errors or point out the negatives far more than the positive things we say.
Sure.
But please remember to point out the positive moments too, such as my homage to Airplane and Independence Day, which was in my intro last week. I know that some of you do, but there's this gotcha mentality in our culture lately. People will say that I nitpick as well, but I focus on trends and patterns, not inconsequential details or errors. If Giacchino is mispronounced for years, then I'm going to say something until it's corrected. More on that later. Remember, it's much easier to be right when you're listening to a podcast versus when you're actually doing one, as your brain is compartmentalizing 20 different things at once. And hopefully, after this week, we won't have to do this segment most weeks, but these are your corrections and clarifications from episode 30.
Yes, indeed. And that will segue into my address towards Schmoeville here before we start on the Collider topics. Now, I want to go over this with you just because you don't have a Facebook, and there's some stuff that you miss out on in the Schmoeville Facebook group. Okay, so someone posted that they had an issue with our show, essentially that we were, again, too negative. They felt like, and this isn't the first time that someone has posted this, they felt like this show doesn't fully represent the Schmoeville Facebook group, and now there are a couple of points to back that up. The first one being, when this show started with Paul Wolf and I, we made it a point to say that this show is for the fans and by the fans. That, in my opinion, is still the case, because I don't know if you think that I'm not a fan because we criticize these shows or whatever, but I watch this content every day by choice. It is my choice to do this, and I do it because I'm passionate about it and because I love it, and I love doing this podcast. So I hope that my fandom is never questioned, and I hope that Brian's fandom is never questioned just because he doesn't have a Facebook page, because that's not a requirement to host this podcast. And I felt like some people were put off by the fact that you're not in the group. I don't know if I'm reading that wrong, but do you want to speak on that briefly before I move on to the next point?
Schmoeville is not limited to the Schmoeville Facebook group. Schmoeville was a term that was started long before there was a Facebook group. There are 271,000 subscribers to the Schmoes Know channel. There are, on most episodes, about 100,000 people that watch the live show. Only 12,000 people of those big numbers are part of the Facebook group.
Yeah.
If you love Schmoes Know, you are a part of Schmoeville. That doesn't mean you're a part of the Schmoeville Facebook group. And if you're not a part of the Schmoeville Facebook group, that doesn't make you a lesser fan. We are not supposed to have the same opinions on movies or the cast on Schmoes Know. We are all supposed to have differing opinions. The one opinion we are supposed to have in common is that we love Schmoes Know. And Ryan Snelling and I both love Schmoes Know, even if we have differing opinions on Sasha or Makuga or certain shows versus other shows. The bottom line is we're united by that one trait, and that's that we love Schmoes Know. We cannot represent 12,000 different people and their differing opinions. It's impossible. We're simply relaying our experiences with these channels and what we love and what we don't like, and it's all done so in a constructive manner, and it's done so with everyone knowing that we love these programs and these people.
Well said. And you have already mentioned the fact that a lot of people like to focus on our negatives when there are also plenty of positives. So I'll just reinforce that yet again. And hopefully people will concentrate on that a little bit more, or at least not be so bitter that we're criticizing. Just remember that there's a balance. I mean, some weeks we might have issues and some weeks we might have praise, but it's not always going to be either or. And it hasn't been, in my opinion. So there's that. The second thing that I want to discuss, and this goes back to the representation of the Facebook group a little bit, I guess that the guys in the Facebook group feel left out. Now, I've been a part of that group for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been a fan of this. And I mean, that's where I saw Paul's status to start this podcast, was because I'm in that group. And I don't know if they feel like that I'm not very active in the page, and this goes back to sort of what Riley was talking about, how he just thinks that we could do a better job on this show as hosts, as representatives of this brand, to try to encompass everything that comes with it. So it's sort of like giving an effort to watch Nightmares. I need to make an effort to hang out with you guys in the Facebook group. That is on me. I am learning this stuff every day. Ask Kristian. Kristian will be the first to tell you that I'm learning how to handle all this. So my apologies for not being more active in the Facebook group. And look, I should, because I spend more than enough time in the YouTube live chat when I shouldn't. I should be hanging out with you guys in the Facebook group. So I understand that. But as far as the format of this podcast, it started out differently than how we do it now, and I think that was a natural and important transition for us, for me and Brian. And you know, look, the Facebook group is great for all of us to come together and to talk about what we love, but at the same time, it's not an ideal place. Like, this podcast can't recap the page, if that makes sense, because the page is a lot of, there are master posts that discuss a lot of the things that we discuss on here, but every other post is either a meme or it's, hey, Kristian thought this about Doctor Strange. What do you think about what he said? And it's just discussion about film opinion. So that, while it's great that it exists, and I obviously love to talk about that kind of stuff, it's not the podcast. Like, the podcast, people have a problem with the podcast not being like the Facebook group, but they should have the exact opposite. They should want it to be an entirely different thing, because if it's just the Facebook group over again, then what's the point? So I hope people remember that and take that into consideration when they're listening to this podcast in the future. Now, I'm saying all this, and I've said it plenty of times, and I'll say it one final time. If you just don't like the show, if you don't like the idea of a recap, or you don't need to listen to us talk about the things that you've watched, by all means, I'm not asking you to listen to it. I don't expect everyone to like it. I mean, I don't always watch the recap shows to my favorite television shows. That's totally fine. But those particular criticisms, while I can handle, I also want to talk them out with you. And I feel like we had a great discussion on the post that was in the Facebook group. Hopefully more people are understanding of what we're doing here, because again, the common ground is that we are doing this out of love, the same as you. So hopefully people recognize that moving forward. Do you have any final thoughts on that, Brian?
That's the important thing. We're doing this show because we love Schmoes Know just like everybody else does. And the fact that people are trying to take away from that or not acknowledge that in favor of their platform or in favor of what they're saying, that's just selfish. We're here to help Schmoes Know, not help our own interests. I'm doing this because I love the programs, I love the people, and I feel like I can contribute something that helps the audience maintain more of an interest, perhaps helps it grow by 0.5 percentage point each week. And I would be on Facebook. I'm not on it personally. I have some issues with it in general, but I would be on it already. However, all I hear are these terrible things that people say about me or our show, and I'm not honestly rushing to join based on the things that I'm hearing from people. It doesn't seem like a healthy place, even though it was created as a way to get away from the YouTube comments. The YouTube comments are not perfect, but I get plenty of positive responses and exchanges within the YouTube comments where I'm often commenting the most. So we're all in agreement here that we love Schmoes Know. How can someone hate against the fact that we are doing this when they handpicked this show, they created this show, and they like the show, they support the show? If they didn't like the show, if they didn't support it, we would not continue to do this show. It was never for the Facebook group, by the Facebook group. Schmoeville is for the fans, by the fans, whether you're a Facebook member or not.
Yeah, that's certainly not a qualification. I mean, you were brought on to host the show because you're more than capable of doing so. So anyway, I just hope that kind of smooths it out a little bit. If there's any question at all, by the way, it's a little backwards, our experience, because I feel like they're more kind to us in the YouTube comments.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I have to address the show more in the Facebook group when it's literally the opposite for every other show. So hopefully that kind of clears the air a little bit. If anyone has ever questioned my fandom for this group, October had mental health awareness week in it, okay? And that was a couple of weeks ago. 2 years ago, and I've been reliving this on my Time Hop app, 2 years ago, I was on leave from work because I had crippling anxiety and depression. And I was literally battling for my life for 3 weeks to just try to stay sane as my body betrayed me. And something that I did to cope with that was start a podcast, and that was where Film Beef came from. I started that with my friend Phil, and I thought it was the best thing for me to stay constructive while I was at home doing nothing, alone with my thoughts, and my therapist wanted me to do it, and that's what Film Beef was, and that's what podcasting was. So imagine like having a podcast but not really knowing what to do with it because you were just talking about movies with your friends. I find online that there is this space that is perfect for talking about movies. I had never seen anything like it. And seeing Screen Junkies and Schmoes and Collider and all that stuff while I was going through this, it gave me more purpose than anything that I can think of in my adult life. And the fact that I'm here now, I mean, I just hope people just aren't questioning that, because ever since I've saw Schmoes Know and Collider for the first time, I fell in love with this, and that is why I am here. So hopefully that clears it up. And yeah, I just wanted to get that out there because, again, I've been reliving that on my Time Hop, and I know that other people, I even talked about it in that same Facebook post. There was a guy who was talking about being bullied, and I can relate to that. And this is sort of an aside, but if anyone ever wants to talk about that kind of stuff, feel free to do so. But anyway, I don't know where I was doing with that, but
Let's go to a positive milestone that was reached today.
Let's do that. Let's transition into the Collider stuff. Brian, this was huge, and I'm really. It was nice that they had this at LA Comic-Con too, by the way, because hopefully they had a little celebration while they were all there together. Let's talk about the milestone. What do you got?
Collider Video crossed 300,000 subscribers. Yes. Here's what's impressive. Guys. They began a month ago at 292,000. The last 30 days, they've gained 8,000 subscribers. Jeremy was announced on October 4th. Obviously, we're already seeing dividends from that announcement. In September, they gained about 4,000 subscribers. So with Jeremy not even on the shows yet, we've already doubled the amount of subscribers that we would normally get. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Once he joins in early November, actually on the programs, who knows what a typical month is going to look like. Now, for those wondering, AMC was just over 302,000 when things were transitioned to Collider in July of 2015. So we are basically back to where things were at AMC almost, but now it's going to be where things were supposed to be back then, and now we have a bigger and better team with better shows and just a better sense of what to do now. So I'm really excited. What about you?
That was like a year and a half's time, give or take, correct? Because they transitioned last summer, the summer before last.
Last summer.
So, I mean, let's just think about all the work that they put into that. I mean, it has been an awesome year, and to come as far as they have, I'm very curious where it's going to go, especially with the inclusion of Jeremy Johns and just everything feels like it's actually coming together. Yeah, exactly. Ken and Copster as well. Everything just feels like it's coming together to create phase 2, if you will, of Collider Video. And you know, I say it every week. I don't go a week without saying it, how excited I am for this growth. But the fact that they've made up their ground with AMC, and I'm just stoked for them. Hopefully they're partying their asses off at this news. I don't know. Hopefully they've checked it. I haven't seen any. Have they tweeted out that they've recognized this?
Yeah, there were some retweets. There were some retweets by everybody because some other people let them know. So they're definitely aware.
Good. All right. Well, hopefully they're getting trashed and celebrating this. Yeah.
And for those wondering, Ken starts next week. He was on vacation the week before he starts, and he cut his ponytail. He's clean shaven in the back of his head now. Not clean shaven, but he's all trimmed up top, nice and neat. So I guess that's a sign of a new beginning, if you will.
Yeah. And speaking of LA Comic-Con, I saw this was on Snapchat. Schmoes Know Snapchat. Apparently, Mance challenged Roca to round 3. So apparently,
way.
Yeah, Mance got everybody worked up, and he came out and started calling Roca out on stage.
Nice.
So apparently that's happening. Jamie Costa was there. I didn't get to see him do any impressions or anything, but there was a hell of a round of applause for him. So hopefully they're having some fun together right now. Ask me a question, Brian.
Who was the contender? Who was the contender that ended up competing against two fans?
Oh, I have no idea.
Damn it, Snelling. You almost had everything I needed to know.
I'm sorry. I don't think they put that on the Snapchat. But that's what I was trying to do. I was yelling. I was hoping that Copster or Ace would ask me a question, but I guess they didn't hear me. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, just all that stuff's got to be a lot of fun. And I'm actually really excited to see how many more subscribers they get after the con. And I think YouTube's lagging a little bit because it hasn't really changed since the last time I looked at it. So I'm going to hit refresh.
There are third-party YouTube statistic sites that will give you a live read of subscribers. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a lag if you just look at YouTube.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see the difference that the con makes. Hopefully we'll see some significant bump as well. That's exciting though. Yeah, we mentioned Ken starts next week. He had a well-deserved vacation. Nightmares actually did a special thing this week. They put out their own commentary, which was unique to every other commentary, correct? Because usually it's just like the core group, but this was specifically from Nightmares, correct?
Yeah, it's usually the movie talk guys, but I kind of like the idea of each genre show doing their own commentaries once in a while. So what would you think about TV Talk doing a commentary for a big premiere or a big season finale of a TV show? Is that something that Ryan Snelling would be interested in?
You know I love TV, Brian. I think to kind of keep it a separate thing from the recaps, they'd have to revisit like classic episodes and do a commentary. So let me ask you, how many movie commentaries have you actually watched the movie along with them, if any at all?
I've watched all of them but X-Men Apocalypse and The Conjuring this week. I will watch The Conjuring eventually. I just haven't had time yet.
Okay, cool. Well, I can't answer the same way because I think I've only watched. They did Force Awakens, so I watched that, I believe. But I'm
still bitter that Kristian did not attend the Return of the Jedi commentary. I specifically was looking forward to that because he knows stuff that most people don't. But yeah, I want to see the TV Talk cast do the Lost pilot or the Breaking Bad pilot, or the Breaking Bad finale, or the Lost finale.
I would love to see them do the Lost finale because I know my girl Sasha is a diehard Lost fan, just like I am. I know that she is not a hater of the finale, which is also like me. So I would love to hear them do the Lost finale. Man, you're getting me amped up about this. I'm glad you brought
for special occasions or anniversaries or something.
Yeah, and they could do it on May.
Yeah, on May 14th, I believe, was the anniversary of the finale, but...
May 23rd, actually.
May 23rd, excuse me. I've got one more point to make about Nightmares this week. For being the resident horror show, I thought their costume game was awfully disappointing this week. Clark was Liz Lemon, I believe, from 30 Rock, hence the bag of Cheetos. However, she kind of looked like she typically looks, and I don't mean that as any offense to Clark, but... I do admire the Sidney Prescott choice by Perry, Sidney from Scream, given the denim button-down shirt, the blood on the face. However, when you add Schnepp's clown mask and Cobster's Jason mask, I thought it was underwhelming as a whole for being the resident horror show. I know that's not all they talk about, but it is the Nightmare show. So I have a strong feeling, in fact, I know for a fact, that TV Talk is going to crush everybody on Monday in the costume department.
Definitely. It kind of reminds me of all those like Instagram posts you'll see of girls. They dress up supposedly as Batman, but they're wearing the Walmart edition like Batman logo on a shirt, and it's like, that's not a costume. Right. You're just wearing the t-shirt. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the costume contest when we get to the live show as well. But man, this was not a week for me to skip Nightmares. I didn't watch it this week, unfortunately. Not on purpose. I just didn't get around to it. But I should have checked out the costumes. I think I might have seen them on Instagram because I knew that Cobster was joining in as well. So did Cobster do a good job though? Was he awesome on Nightmares?
Oh, he's good. He knows his horror. I mean, Mark Riley was sick. He had that Wood Ranch chopped salad, the chopped salad of death, and it put him out of commission for most of the week. He wasn't on Schmoes. And for anyone wondering, his costume was going to be a Beetlejuice costume. However, he was too sick to attend and wear it.
Well, to make up for my absence on last Tuesday, I will also watch The Conjuring with your guys' commentary, and I'm very much looking forward to it as well. It'd be a great way to spend my Halloween on Monday. Let's get to what's next. Heroes. What do you got on Heroes this week?
I have a point that pertains to Heroes as well as a few other programs and videos, and it's about Doctor Strange, and it's the fact that Marvel gives access to critics, gives films early access to critics because they're proud of their films, they're confident in their films, they want the buzz to start early. Mm-hmm. However, in some cases, it's 2 weeks before guys like us are able to see the film, yet we've heard everything there is to know about this movie. We kind of know what to expect. I've already heard at least 6 reviews plus discussions on Movie Talk as well as Heroes. Do you think it's too early to start talking about these films when we can't see the film for 2 weeks when these discussions begin? Should they delay these discussions until it's closer to when we can see it? Again, I'm not necessarily criticizing Collider. I'm just wondering if you think there's, I don't know, perhaps a problem with doing this too soon. I mean, in some cases, and I noticed this with Civil War, by the time we see the movie, these people that we like to talk about the films with, they're already kind of sick of the film because they've seen it 3 or 4 times by then. So do you have any issue with the early discussion of Marvel films?
Well, it was a lot worse with Civil War. I mean, they watched that a month before, so I've definitely noticed this trend. Now, ever since I started watching Collider, I have found myself to not get nearly as excited for these films as I did prior to watching Collider. Now, I'm not saying that taints my experience necessarily. Like, I haven't found myself disliking the movies for any reason. But again, hearing these people talk so much, which is, again, my choice to listen to it. I understand it's my choice to not turn it off.
We could just ignore it too, but it's kind of hard to avoid when there are so many shows and videos talking about it.
Yeah, and, I'm subscribed to so many people in this space that, again, have these types of conversations about these movies. So I expose myself to it a lot. I'm not going to complain about it because I like hearing the discussion. I have not listened to their official non-spoiler review that they released a week ago, I believe. But, I could see where kind of you get worn down a little bit, and it just kind of hearing people talk about it lowers the excitement, I think. But it doesn't change my opinion of the movie, if that makes sense.
Even non-spoiler, though, you get kind of a blueprint of the movie in your head. Like, for Civil War, I knew exactly how many action set pieces there were to expect. And I heard for 3 weeks how amazing the airport scene was. And while it was good, it was by no means my favorite action set piece of that film. So it's not necessarily a complaint. It's just a question that I wanted to ask you for discussion's sake.
I've noticed the exact opposite for Jedi Council. Jedi Council enhances my fandom of Star Wars because I know less about Star Wars than I do the topics that they discuss on Heroes. Probably because that's, right now superhero fandom is in the zeitgeist, in my opinion, more so than Star Wars, even though Star Wars is obviously huge. There's just, I get more education watching Jedi Council, and Kristian and all that gang do a really good job theorizing months in advance what's going to happen in the next movie, and they talk about the books that I'm not really exposed to. So what I just spoke to about Heroes is actually the exact opposite for Jedi Council. Do you see where I'm going with that?
I do.
So.
And Perry subbed in this week. Ellis was strangely absent, even though he was on the live show later that night. Tiffany was gone. Riley was sick. As I mentioned, he was supposed to sub in this episode, but the Wood Ranch chop salad of death, once again, it kills you, man. So it seems like Perry jumped in last minute, and she did the best she could, trying to kind of organize someone else's notes. But there was a funny moment where Perry mispronounced Michael Giacchino. And Kid Kristian tried to correct her, but unfortunately, Kid Kristian mispronounced Giacchino. In doing so, he said Giacchino, and I'm going to give him half a credit for at least trying, for at least stepping forward to say something. However, what I found more interesting was that there was a moment where there was this internal debate on Kristian's face. Do I credit Brian with this or not? And instead he went with, our council watchers have informed us that it's Giacchino or Giacchino, as he mistakenly said. So once again, he's denying us the credit on the Collider platform for whatever reason.
With the exception of your Passengers scoop that you had on Movie Talk, where there was a nice plug for Schmoeville and he gave you credit for that. That was nice. But yeah, he has been reluctant to talk about us on Collider.
I got Giacchino credit the first time, but yeah, other than the Anna Faris scoop and Giacchino the first time, that's really it. And it's funny, I meant to mention this a while ago, but Campea came on an episode of Movie Talk and tried to dismiss what I didn't have Kristian report it, but Kristian did report it after I sent it to him as a potential story. And Campea later came on and tried to dismiss it as just a rumor, when it was Chris Pratt's wife, Anna Faris, was literally saying, my husband is in wherever shooting or reshooting passengers. Reshooting passengers. He's out of town for passengers reshoots. And Campea did not want to acknowledge it. So I don't know. I don't know what the point of that point was, but it was funny to see Kristian's face. And I know you are big on facial expressions when it comes to watching these shows. So check that out.
I don't know if you realize this, Kristian, but we recap everything in Collider. So we deserve to be mentioned on that programming just as much as the live show, okay? Come on. Really? Really? Okay. Were you excited for our boy getting to talk to Pablo Hidalgo on air? That was pretty cool, right?
I did not know half of what they were talking about since I'm not into canon all that much, but it was still great to see and hear Kristian fulfill one of these goals of his that he's been talking about for quite a while, and that's making inroads in the Star Wars community. Pablo Hidalgo was really at the top of that list. Of course, he's got Bob Iger on the mind eventually, but this was a big week for Kristian.
We joke a lot about how these guys are on Marvel's payroll, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kristian didn't end up working for Lucasfilm one day. He is such a great representative of all things Star Wars, and the thing that he does very well... Ambassador, better word, thank you. The thing he does very well is get me to spend money on all of the books that they talk about. I've got Bloodline, I've got... I can't see my bookshelf from here. I've got Lost Stars, a couple others that were really intriguing to me just because of Kristian Harloff, and that visual guide through the years that he mentioned with Pablo was great. Listening, I'm definitely going to check that out. Listening to Pablo talk about his job at Star Wars, that has always fascinated me, because before now, Pablo has just been described to me through Kristian's words, and the fact that, you hear this guy as a story group leader at Lucasfilm, that kind of blows your mind that that's a job. And it's not necessarily fair to say that all he does is contain information and know a lot about stories. I know he does a lot more than that, but it's just fascinating all around. I didn't get to watch all of it in its entirety. I watched about half of it, and then when they started talking about the crystals and the lights, once they started talking about that, I fell away. Actually, the truth is I started recording this podcast, and that's what interrupted the interview. But yeah, again, like you said, it's very cool. It keeps me engaged as a fan. I love hearing about this stuff. I will definitely finish the interview after we're done recording. So I'm excited for Kristian, too, definitely.
Whenever I think about canon, I'm reminded of Schnepp and Kristian bickering during these Star Wars commentaries. Mm-hmm. Because Kristian kept bringing up stuff from the books, and Schnepp kept getting all frustrated because he only watches the movies. So he just would eventually start mocking Kristian for bringing up all these things that you have to read a book to find out. So I just think of that for some reason whenever canon is brought up. But speaking of other genre-related stuff, did you get a chance to watch the latest Collider Crash Course, which is the Who is Deathstroke, a.k.a. Deathstroke, that John Campea did?
I did, and you know what I've learned? Collider Crash Courses are perfect way to spend your time while on the shitter.
I did not expect you to go there, but continue.
Well, it's short form. It's like a little nugget. It takes about the time it takes to use the...
Pun intended?
There's my fake laugh. It takes about as much time as it does to use the restroom, and, they're fun to watch. I like these a lot. I know that there's one particular moment that you want to talk about, one joke that Campea made that didn't really quite hit or really make a whole lot of sense, really, did it?
The Adam Sandler joke was so cringeworthy. It just... I'm not going to get into it, but it was just a strange joke all the way around. It felt so out of place, but great stuff regardless. And for those scoring at home, so far Kristian's in the lead. His Mace Windu is not Snoke is in the lead with 50,000 viewers. Schnepp is second with 29,000 for his Who is Mr. Sinister. Currently Deathstroke's about 15,000 viewers. I thought it would be higher just because John has, a sizable following. People seem to write the guy open letters for some reason. So I'm sure that'll jump up, in short order. But you would think that Deathstroke would be a bit higher just because it was in the news recently. that Joe Manganiello would be playing him. So it is relevant to right now. So I'm surprised it's not higher than 15,000 is my point.
And, you know, of all the things that Collider.com can put up on their website from Collider Video, that's one of them.
Exactly.
I don't think that they've done that yet. I think they only put up the genre shows. I don't even know if they put up Schmoedown. Maybe they do. I'm sure Riley will correct me on that. But that is a great video for Collider.com to utilize. So I'm going to double check that once we're done recording to see if they show those at all. But anyway, yeah, very well done. And again, I look forward to more of these in the future. I think they're great. Keep up the great work. Not to go back, but I just thought of something. You mentioned Schnepp giving Kristian a hard time. Isn't it funny that Schnepp, like if the roles were reversed, Schnepp would do the exact same thing? Yeah. Schnepp is a sweaty. He would be talking about how this movie stayed faithful to the comics. So it's funny to see him get worked up over the exact same thing just with Star Wars. And another thing that he did on Heroes, I don't know if you noticed this, Amy Dallin and Schnepp and Campia had that quick aside about people who judge comic books. And Schnepp kind of was on the defense, talking about how you shouldn't just hate on things that you haven't seen yet. And Campia made the point, that's literally our job on Movie Talk.
Right.
But great discussions, though.
Contradicted the whole brand.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, I like those sort of discussions when they actually, because they kind of went back and forth. I'm not saying they were angry at each other, but I liked hearing them sort of debate that amongst themselves. But anyway.
Tell me about the TV Talk comments.
Yeah, man, they were bad. God, they were so bad. Roughly 1/3 of the thumbs on this week's TV Talk were dislikes. I think it was above 500, and I think there was like 1,700 total between the two. I mean, it's just upsetting. And I'm not going to make this about Sasha. We talked plenty about Sasha, my feelings on Sasha and her quote-unquote fans or haters, whatever. Those remain the same. But it didn't help that she started out the video saying, go ahead and just dislike that. Not that the people had to do it just because she said it. I don't know, man. It's just, it really, really pisses me off because, you know, this is my favorite show and the YouTube comments were just so shitty. And the main reason why is because they were discussing that stupid Walking Dead premiere. Now, I'm not going to go into it, how I feel about The Walking Dead. Let me just say that The Walking Dead, I'll just sum it up. The Walking Dead was ruined for me by its fans than the actual show was in terms of quality. And that's why, like 4 years ago, I quit watching the show because there were a couple of weeks that I lagged on watching it. And then the fans would ruin it on Twitter. And they literally ruined this show for me. And before I watched TV Talk, and the fact that the premiere was spoiled for me, all that stuff, there was so much resentment already built up for me from Walking Dead fans. And the fact that they didn't help the cause on TV Talk this week pissed me off even more, because it's mainly just the fact that they disliked their opinions on the show, which leads to a bigger problem that people need to chill the hell out when someone else has a different opinion. And the main thing I want to say to these people is that just remember they have a recap show. Like people who are talking about giving up on TV Talk just because they hated on Walking Dead, watch the recap show that's on Sunday. Then watch TV Talk and skip that segment if they discuss it.
Yeah, Josh is the only one who likes the show who is a cast member on TV Talk for the most part.
It just drives me nuts that there were people that were like just protesting TV Talk. This was the final straw. Now they're out. They're not going to watch anymore. Over what? So what? I hate it. It's very hard to have a
reasonable conversation with Walking Dead fans. I've learned this the hard way over the years. I'm not being funny. I'm just being truthful. I mean, they want it to be a prestige show, and it's not regarded as a prestige show. And so they have to get aggressive and argumentative over the fact that they think it is when the critical consensus does not. So to your previous point, I had this year's premiere spoiled for me like 5 months ago because someone that I follow was stalking the production photos that drones will pick up from illegally surveilling the set. And it turns out they were right 5 months ago.
Wow. That sucks. Or does it? Because do you care?
I didn't care. I didn't care.
That's fine. I care because it's affecting Collider. That's what I care about. So, look, if you were one of those people in the comment section, just watch the recap on Sunday, okay? And skip the Walking Dead portion on TV Talk. It's that simple. Don't get so pissed just because not everyone likes The Walking Dead, okay? I mean, you're in the majority. What do you care? You're in the majority. There are going to be people that dislike it, sure, but it's like 20 million viewers that premiere, so just chill out. I don't want to make this about Walking Dead. It's supposed to be about Collider, but I don't know. I hated seeing that they were getting so much hate over such a shitty reason. And then, of course, there were things about Sasha on there that I won't get into, but just chill out. That's all I've got on Collider topics before we move into the Schmoedown.
Let's get to the movie trivia Schmoedown. Want to start with the Team Schmoes versus Team Top 10 Tag Team Championship?
Yeah. Well, no and yes.
Let's not bury the lead here. There was a lot of controversy surrounding Mark and Kristian's decision to go with movie release dates in round 2. I didn't necessarily object to the move. What concerned me most was that with multiple choice, you're giving yourself no help when it comes to multiple choice. I don't know if they expected all of the dates to be 4 consecutive dates in a row when it came to multiple choice, because most people can figure out the general 5-year vicinity in which a movie came out. The problem is when you're given 4 consecutive dates, that's no help at all. So I wonder if they misread what the multiple choice might be. And had they known what the multiple choice might be, that would have changed their decision.
If people, I commented, I think in the match itself on the YouTube, or in the master post on Facebook, I was pissed. And Kristian knows I was upset about it. So he knows that there's probably a mini rant coming. Look, this is me genuinely asking you this, okay? Just because you're more in tune with the history of the show. Have Mark and Kristian ever been the guys to be dominant in the topic of movie release dates? Like, because if I'm wrong about this, feel free to correct me. But ever since I have watched these guys, that has never been known or never come up at all.
Look, it's not something that I have looked out for, so I can't really say one way or another. But if Kristian says he's confident in movie release dates, if Mark says the same thing, I really can't disagree with that. The problem is really multiple choice. They gave themselves no added help, so that's where I would have chosen a different category and a second spin.
Okay, I'm not saying that Kristian is obviously lying or anything. I think that's why people and I don't think this. I think that is one thing that makes people think this is rigged. Because it's like, what? Why? When are you the guys that were good at movie release dates? Anytime the topic of movie release dates comes up, the only person that's mentioned is Scott Mance. No one else is supposed to be good at this. Now, I mean, they got a couple right. I'm not saying they didn't. And, they made fun of themselves in later episodes of on Collider or whatever after the match. So they obviously know their stuff, but it's like, of all the things that they could have picked, there are so many other topics on that wheel. Comic books, sci-fi, fantasy, scores. That's something Kristian can do. Scores was on there.
I'm not going to second guess the decision. I just think I'm just curious if they knew what multiple choice truly involved or not. That's what I'm curious about. But I want to save my comments regarding the fan response until we've recapped the individual match.
Okay, well, what I'll say is that I was Chris, and I don't know if I'm going to mispronounce your name, Neja, excuse me, Chris Neja, in the Facebook group. He corrected me and said that they did well in release dates during Phase 5 and apparently killed it. But, look, they're obviously not dumb. I have no problem criticizing the decision because I think they regret it. Or Kristian said that which one said they did regret it? One of them defended themselves, and then I think the other was like, well, we could have done something else.
Well, Kristian brought up the multiple choice point. He said, I don't think Kristian factored what multiple choice would be. I think they may have thought it would be 1987, 1993, 1962. You can't do any process of elimination with the way multiple choice was set up, and that's why another category would have been more favorable. But as far as taking the category, I'm not going to second guess the decision to do it because it sounds like they have some history of success in that category.
Okay, fair enough. But it is just really upsetting because all props to Roca. I mean, again, like you mentioned this to me earlier. You told me this was his silver lining and you were looking for it.
He finally got his silver lining a few days after all the terrible things that came first. So there is that.
So credit to him and congratulations to Nos, but my loyalty lies with Team Schmo. So it was an upsetting loss. Without a doubt. But I mean, what were your aside from that overall reactions to the match?
Well, I'm just disappointed that they are not going to be competing for a while. It sounds like they want to go into announcer mode, promoter mode, which I totally understand. This is a growing league, so they got to spend their time wisely. But I'll miss them on the battlefield.
Yeah, I wonder what factors into that. By the way, I think it could be. And again, I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm not saying that at all. I don't agree with that. But I feel like there's got to be other factors to be able to say that. And I immediately looked up Ellis' stand-up schedule because I thought, well, maybe it's a little congested around the holidays. Maybe he's got some tour dates and they were like, well, this is actually going to work out because I'm not going to really be in town. And I thought that might affect some stuff. But thank God.
Dates in December.
Yeah, but thankfully you're right. It's a growing league, and there are more people to compete, so they could have taken that opportunity to give those matches to other people. His dates in December I don't think were enough to call for that. But
right.
I do find it a little bit weird that they're stepping back a little bit. But anyway, the match. What was the 8-19 was the final score, right? And
19-8.
Right. So round 3 is what destroyed them, and they got the knockout in round 4, top 10. Overall, I thought, again, aside from just that decision, it wasn't the greatest match. I was a little bit disappointed for it to be a match for the belt.
I'm holding my thoughts back for a reason, so just I want to say more, but I'm holding back until we're done recapping the next match. You'll understand why.
Okay, well, we can get to that if you're ready, if you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, the SPR Experience faced her good friend, Kara Warner. Kara works for People magazine, and I liked the Pabst Blue Ribbon intro for Kara. I like that both Sasha and Kara were drinking it. Reminds me of college. I like that Sasha came out with a full entourage of women. We've desperately needed a female presence, a bigger female presence within this league, and with 6 Degrees as well as whomever else, Rotten Tomatoes and Gray, it's important to have women being added to this league. And I think SPR is going to be a fantastic addition, and I was glad to see her. Even if the match wasn't that great, I was glad to see her show that she can be a factor. I mean, she got some pretty difficult questions right.
Did you see me shut down that guy in the comments because they were talking about how trashy Sasha was because they came out drinking, and I'm like, hey, did you forget when Team Heroes was drinking a beer, and did you forget the entire existence of the Schmoes Know show?
Right, it's totally fine if the guys come out drinking beer with no shirts on, but if the women do it, then it's an issue.
Yeah, keep saying that there's not a sexist issue online, guys. Keep saying it. But anyway, you're right. The match wasn't amazing, but we've certainly had worse matches. That match between Umberto and Jeff Snyder comes screaming back to me instantly. But
although the Team Fanuga match, that was the worst match I've ever seen. So here's my general point. There's this entitlement going on amongst fans right now. The sense of fan entitlement. There are complaints of fixed matches 1 minute, then complaints of lousy matches the next minute. So obviously people weren't happy about the quality of this match. However, they were then complaining about Kristian and Mark's match being fixed earlier in the week. So it sounds like they want the matches to be fixed so that they guarantee entertainment every week, no matter what. because you cannot guarantee an entertaining match every single week, especially when you are growing a league. The UFC spends millions of dollars to promote their pay-per-view events. Not all of their matches are going to be good. A lot of them are bad, in fact. A lot of the matches that you'd think would be really good end up being quick knockouts. And then it's no different in movie trivia. You're going to have quick defeats, lopsided defeats. We've just been spoiled of late. We've had so many great matches thanks to the Ultimate Schmoedown that we've been spoiled of late. That's created some entitlement amongst some fans. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say that it's fixed 1 minute and then crappy the next, and that they owe you something more entertaining when it's, fixed 1 minute and not the next. So this proves that these matches are not fixed. This absolutely proves that they're not fixed. And that's fine. You cannot expect Roca and Harloff every single time.
That is such a great point to make. So thank you for doing that. And it reminds me of my beloved Kentucky Wildcats. Let me compare it to that, because I am a UK fan. I'm from Kentucky. The fans of the UK Wildcats are out of their minds. They're nuts. We set couches on fire when we win in the NCAA tournament. We are bonkers. And we bleed blue for Kentucky basketball. This would be like if and some fans probably do this. I don't. But when you get a bad match in the Schmoedown, they're so easy to complain about the entire, like, the concept of the Schmoedown. Like, well, if this match is bad, then the Schmoedown has a problem. They can't just accept, like you said, that one match isn't going to be as good as the others. And that'd be like if every time UK lost to a team, then I would blame the NCAA or say that basketball is rigged against UK. Like, that's just not the reality. It's just not. So maybe Schmoedown fans aren't sports fans. They don't realize that it's such a, come on.
You're not going to have a buzzer beater finish every single time. There are going to be lopsided wins. There are going to be disappointing matches. But the point is, we have to grow the league. And trying out new competitors is important to the growth of the league. And if you love the league, you want it to have these matches so that it reaches more people and bigger audiences. And of course, we can't overlook the fact that Finstock came out. He interrupted the interview with Sasha and Kara, and Sasha had previously challenged Finstock, and he accepted the challenge. So I'm totally excited about an SPR experience versus the Finstock experience. That's a great positive to come out of this match, on top of Sasha getting her first W.
He wasn't on the live show, but I'm so happy we got that bit of him at the end of that match. That was really great. That was really exciting. By the way, let me just say, you're the king at speculation on this podcast, and I love you for it. You're not always right. A lot of times you are, though. I just want to make it a point to bring up that I deserve credit, because I called it. During the press conference, I knew that because these were pre-taped, the fact that Kristian brought up the rules of the technical knockout, that we would be seeing it. And I thought it was going to be that week, but I also said I wouldn't be surprised if it would happen the next week. And that being this week, we saw the first technical knockout in that match. So, surprise, I guess. Do you like that match ended? Oh, no, hold on. I have to talk about the thing about Kara Warner. Now, I've seen her on movie fights. I didn't mean to throw you off. I'm sorry.
I've seen her on TV Talk as well.
So, Kara Warner was not really that exciting when I saw her on movie fights. So, when this match got started, I was a little worried. I was like, well, hopefully she brings it, because Sasha's going to bring it. I know Sasha's going to bring it. So, hopefully Kara can try to match her excitement. So, I felt good. I like that she brought up the PBR, like you said. But when she guessed Attack the Block for that 2007 horror movie, I literally threw my pencil across the room.
There's a problem when the tagline is sex, clothes, popularity. Is there a problem here? When I'm able to know right away that it's Clueless and she doesn't have a guess, that's a problem because she should know that. And even if she shouldn't know it, even if she doesn't know it, she should still at least throw out a guess. You know, I don't know, Legally Blonde. Throw something out there. But she didn't have that. So, look, I'm not going to throw Kara under the bus for one match, but the point was we got SPR on the board. I'm happy to see it. I like Kara. I don't know if she's going to have a future in this league, but it's important that we try people out. 6 Degrees, I didn't know anything about 6 Degrees. Miss Movies. And now I want to see them in this competition again, not just because they won, but because they're fun to watch, I think. So it's important to grow this league and try out new competitors, especially female competitors.
Yeah, well, okay, let's be fair then. Let's make fun of Kristian and Mark. They can't go unnoticed. Ellis didn't know that Whiplash quote, nor did he know Schwarzenegger's occupation in Total Recall, which is something that, of all people, Mark Ellis should get. So,
well, it's one thing to not know, but to not have just a guess. Like Makuga, say what you want about him. I give him a hard time all the time, but I've given him credit for this countless times. He is the king of the educated guess. He is the king of working the clock to give himself the time necessary to think of a potential educated guess. So I wish other people would utilize the clock in their favor, and they're starting to. I've seen other people use the clock, like Makuga, ask for questions to be repeated. I don't think Kara knew the rules that well. I mean, there are moments where she could have asked for multiple choice and didn't. I think Sasha stole a 2-pointer from her because she didn't ask for multiple choice. But right. Look, you got to try out new people, and it's important to get a bigger female presence, and this helped accomplish that.
Are you ready to get into the live show and all that it brings?
I got to give you the mispronunciation of the week.
Let's do it. Go for it.
Well, I've got an easy one this week as we prepare for a big one in a couple weeks, thanks to a little movie called Arrival. However, this week's mispronunciation is the Academy Award-winning actress from The Danish Girl, Ex Machina, The Light Between Oceans, the upcoming Tomb Raider reboot, and one of Snelling's favorite films of last year, Burnt. I'm talking about none other than Alicia Vikander. Not Alicia, not Alicia like Alicia Silverstone of Clueless fame, Speak of the Devil. It's Alicia Vikander. Alicia Vikander. Alicia Vikander.
So Alicia Vikander.
Stop it. Alicia Vikander. That is this week's mispronunciation of the week.
Thank you very much, Brian. Before we move on, I meant to mention this earlier, by the way. I am currently running a giveaway specifically for Schmoeville, and I wanted to remind you guys right now to get a free Schmoes Know shirt of your choice. I just need you to rate and review my new podcast, Sight and Sound, on iTunes. I know this is a random plug, but I wanted to get it out before I forget because I forgot to mention it earlier. Rate and review my new podcast, Sight and Sound, which you can find on my Twitter, and because that contest is ending at the end of this week. And yeah, and then if you like the Facebook page as well, then we're giving away Star Trek Beyond Blu-ray. But rate and review Sight and Sound on iTunes, and let me know too. That way I know that you're coming from Schmoeville, and then we're gonna pick out a winner for your Schmoes Know shirt of choice, and I'll remind everyone at the end. But with that being said, let's get into the live show.
Schmoes Know show number 256, Halloween special. We had Kristian, Mark, the return of the SPR experience with Kristian at the table, as well as Magic Hat Makuga. Riley was sick, so there's no Riley, of course. No Brett, no Finstock, no JCE, and no Ken because he was on vacation, as we mentioned earlier. So, what'd you think of the panel this week?
This was a skeleton crew, pun intended. Look, Kristian, Ellis, Sasha, Makuga. On any other episode, I would applaud them. And I'm not saying they didn't do poorly in this episode. Actually, no. Ellis was off. Ellis was weird. Ellis was not Ellis. And I think that he tried to blame it on the raccoon
blood.
but I don't see if it was really that big of a deal. There's no reason why he would have worn that for 2 hours. So I think he was already off, and something was going on with him, but he stuck to that costume because that wasn't the issue. And that's sort of my theory. That's all I have to go on. But he just using his words, he talks about how he told me that he's great at being on for the camera. And he's talked about how different he is off camera. He was not on this week. I don't know what was up with him, but it was glaringly obvious. Are you feeling what I'm feeling?
Look, you can't hit them all out of the park. I'm not as big on this thought as you are. I'm not saying he's the best he's ever been, but he is entitled to an average show once in a while. So I wasn't as caught up in this as you are. So I'm not trying to go the other way, but it didn't affect me as much as it seems to affect you.
Hey, look, I'm just worried about him. I'm not hating on the guy. I was
He's
like,
fine.
I just wanted to give him a hug, or put a fan in front of his face or something. I know Kopster's hogging the air conditioner over there at the Wanger table. I felt bad. I was like, part of me was like, you know what? You don't have to do this show for me. I know you feel like you have to, but if you just need to go lay down or something, feel free to take a break. Yeah, it sucked.
It didn't suck. Come on. It didn't suck.
No, I'm not saying he sucked. I'm saying it sucked that it felt like he was off, is what I'm saying. I'm not hating on him. But
quick point. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been meaning to say this for several weeks now, and I keep forgetting, or we keep getting sidetracked.
This is gonna be good.
I love the new. It's not that big a deal, but it's kind of cool. But I love the new thumbnail cutouts that they're using in the video thumbnails, and that is all Kopster. That is an addition that he made as the senior producer, and I love that it shows each of the main cast for that week. There's a nice feel to it. I like the way it looks. And that's just a minor addition that I've been meaning to point out for a while.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is something that I want to address.
I'm just referencing the thumbnail cutouts.
Oh, I know. That reminded me to talk about the title of the Schmoes Know show. Now, you and I had a discussion, and guys, you'll notice that the titles of our episodes are going to be different. We changed up the artwork. Shout out to my boy Jay Williams, Jay with an E. Yeah, he did the great artwork that you'll see on our thumbnail and in the master
Cincinnati's
post.
Best drug dealer.
Right.
That's where you saw Ellis, right?
Yeah, that's where I saw Ellis, Cincinnati.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I got the city right.
Yeah. So you'll see some changes, and Brian consciously brought up the point that we need to have Schmoes Know show in our title to optimize us in the search. Now, it's funny that we made that change this week, because I just now, for the first time, realized that when they title their shows, it doesn't even say Schmoes Know show. It said SK show. And I can't believe I haven't picked up on this, but is that not...
They can get away with that, though. They can get away with that because they are Schmoes Know. It's not a pressing term for them like it is for us. In their case, they're already going to rank well for Schmoes Know. They need to save the character limits or the characters for the actual content they're discussing, which it wasn't a long title this week, but sometimes they can get pretty long, such as plus Derek C. in France on top of fall movie preview or whatever else they're doing that week.
I just find it odd, like if someone had heard of Schmoes Know and didn't know that was the live show, and maybe it's, titled under the playlist Schmoes Know show. I don't have it right in front of me, but I remember being subscribed to Schmoes for a while and not having seen any episodes of the live show, because I subscribed sometime the summer before last, and Phase 5 was still going on, but I had no idea that this thing was happening because I only watched their movie reviews. So I'm just curious if they had changed the title of that, if it would help newcomers understand what that was. Because I know that there are people that were probably in my similar situation where they find the movie review, don't realize that they do this live show. So
we're
I was just
talking
thinking
two
out to
separate
those
things.
people.
Hold on a second. We're talking about two separate things here. There's optimization for the search results, and then there is branding of the video titles. So what you're saying is, for first-time viewers, it probably serves them better to have Schmoes Know show written in case that first-time viewer sees the video, because SK show may not be easily understood by first-time viewers. That's where you rely on the artwork that's on the actual thumbnail, as well as the playlist names. But yes, there is a valid point there that is not related to optimization of the YouTube search results that would compel them to potentially change it to Schmoes Know show number 256.
Thank you. All I needed was your validation, and I got it. Thank you so much. I want to move away from... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, in our case, we had very different reasons. We were centered around YouTube search results.
Yeah. I want to bring out a positive, because I don't want to sound like I'm being negative. I love you so much, Mark Ellis. The thing that made this episode for me was everything that Copster put into this. This is the biggest pro. The cutaways to the skeleton, the additional content that played throughout the week on the podcast channel, his breaks, the intro to the video, the outro to the video, everything that Copster did, and I'm sure that the other guys behind the scenes helped out as well, so hopefully I'm giving you a good enough shout out too. But everything involved in the production specifically for this episode was hands down the best thing about it. Every cutaway to that skeleton made me crack up. Kristian did a great job of setting that up, making sure that the camera would cut to Copster whenever he needed to speak. All of that was fantastic. So, Copster, great job on all the additional content and the breaks and all of that stuff. It was awesome. And everyone else who had a hand in that, thank you. I think everyone had a ton of fun with that. But that was my favorite thing about this episode. So
I echo you on that completely. Another highlight for me was the fact that Kristian referenced the SPR experience, and he immortalized my brainchild to start the episode. So a term that I started on this podcast made the live show and is now ingrained in its history. That's just a cool thing to me. It's not a big deal, but it's just cool. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I kind of think it's a big deal. Even though I didn't come up with it or anything, I'm excited for you. Because nothing that I've done has been coined on the live show, so it's definitely cool.
Well, you did say the mild man. The mild man was something they addressed at one point, so that's something.
I didn't say that. Sasha came up with that.
Oh, did she call? Oh, and you talked about it on this show.
Yeah. Okay. Sasha came up.
Well,
with
never mind
man.
then. Never mind. I don't want to give you credit whatsoever then.
I was a little disappointed.
Thank you for the courtesy laugh.
The fake laugh, excuse me.
Yes,
I was a little disappointed that Sasha, I think she lied. I don't think she used to listen to this episode. And I might be correct, or this show, excuse me. I never heard of her listening to the show. Because every time that Riley has brought up how much of fans we are of her, she always acts surprised or, oh, that's great, which is fine. She doesn't have to listen to the show. I just thought it was weird that she said she used to listen, and I've never known her to do that. And I mean, I've had a few conversations with her directly, and I've never heard that brought up.
Well, here's what I think happened. A month ago, when Riley was talking about how much he enjoyed his episode with me, he was saying how she is our favorite because she was confusing us with the Schmoeville Facebook group, and he clarified to her, no, the podcast. I think she went and listened to our show after that episode, and therefore that's what she was referencing on this episode, as if to say she used to listen to it. So I think she went and listened after she heard that we praised her a bunch of times. And she didn't actually listen regularly, but I think she went and listened based on Riley's word of mouth. It's highly possible that she was just being polite, just being courteous, but she did reference the fact that she and I have tweeted each other about a bunch of things here and there. So I think she was being truthful that she has listened. Mark Ellis came out and admitted that he doesn't listen all that often. We know Kristian listens every Sunday. Brett, the pit boss. So most people listen. We don't need them to listen, but the fact that they tell us when they do, the fact that they support us, it means the world. So I want to address a couple things, though, in regards to Kristian and these ideas that he put out in regards to Sasha. So do you have any other points before I go off on a semi-mini rant?
I can wait. Go ahead.
So Kristian posited the idea that I was the one who said, oh, Sasha was leaving, that Kristian hated her, and that's simply not accurate. That is inaccurate. First off, everybody knows by now, my first episode, I hinted and predicted that because of HitFix's fandemonium that Miri would eventually leave. And Kristian threw me off that trail when, as it turned out later, which I didn't find out until later, that I called it before she had even told them. So Kristian kind of threw me off the trail of Miri because he did not know yet that she was going to be leaving. He did not do anything to get me back on that trail, but he kept me off that trail. So I had no choice but to automatically look towards Sasha when we found out that someone would be leaving. And the reason being was Sasha disappeared for 5 weeks after the Derek Cianfrance interview. There was a few moments that we've mentioned on this show that might have irritated Kristian in regards to that episode. And then she vanished for 5 episodes without an explanation. When there's no explanation for absences, that is a warning sign in this space. So the fact that no one was talking about Sasha, who was a regular main desk cast member for a long time, that is enough for me to raise the concern. I didn't think Kristian hated her, but it was enough for me to get the conversation started and to begin asking those questions. So she hadn't been on in 5 weeks. She finally showed up on episode number 252. Kristian was absent. So that kind of fueled the fire a little bit more because she was on in a week that he wasn't there. And we finally got a partial explanation for Sasha's absence when she was on that week. But then Kristian sent out that weird Perry announcement. So there were so many factors before Sasha eventually came back on with Ellis and no Kristian that would lead me to raise those questions that she might be the one to leave. So it wasn't just me trying to stir up trouble, me trying to cause rumors. There was actual evidence to make me think this. And that's because my previous Miri theory was kind of, I was sent away from my previous Miri theory. That's why I brought up Sasha, but there were reasons for it. But now this is the first time in 2 months that Kristian is at the same desk as SPR. The first show in 2 months that they are on with each other. So without an explanation, I think those questions needed to be raised since they were teasing for a while. Someone was leaving, Perry was joining, etc.
Yeah. Look, I never agreed with you. I thought that, and I'm not saying you were trying to stir shit up, but I never agreed that Kristian was ever upset with Sasha over the Cianfrance interview. So
I was just raising a question. I didn't actually think it either, but the point needed to be raised.
I see why your mind went there anyway, but we sort of like had half of an explanation because I think she was actually sick during like one of those 4 weeks that she was absent, but it was,
she was on
something
movie fights
to
1 week. No, she was all over the place.
Yeah,
but they didn't tell us.
It was something to address because when we all started Phase 6, Sasha was just as much of a part of it as Mark and Kristian were, at least in my eyes, because I didn't really know a lot about Sasha at that point, and it was the first time that I ever watched the live show in its prime time. So to me, Sasha was just as crucial as the other two. I thought that was part of what the live show was. So it is absolutely
sick. And she was working on the web series. So she was ingrained in her status, and all of a sudden she just disappears for 5 weeks. That is something to talk about.
I could not be happier, though, that she is back, and apparently nothing is wrong. Maybe just some things were coming up and it never quite worked out. I don't know if we'll ever get the explanation, but
Well, here's the thing. For whatever reason, they used to have 2 women at the main desk to start a show plenty of times. But since they moved to Collider, they almost never have 2 women to start the show at the main desk. It's always, for the most part, 1 woman. So I don't know why they are doing it. I don't know why they can't have more than 1 woman on at a time. I know the addition of Brett fills 1 spot at the main desk. I don't know if they want to put one of the women panelists at the Wanger table to start the show. Maybe that's not a look that they want. Previously, they could get away with it because of the couch at AfterBuzz, but part of me thinks that they don't want to throw someone that's important at the Wanger table to start the episode. And that's no offense to anyone who does start the episode there, but for some reason they are trying to avoid having 2 women on in a given episode at the main desk. I don't know why, other than the fact that Brett is there to take a regular seat every week for the most part. Lately Brett and Makuga seem to rotate as well.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Because Makuga was gone for like 3 weeks, so he was almost gone as long as Sasha was at one point.
Well, I've gone through his appearances, and he averages every other week. Sometimes he'll miss 2 weeks, but then he'll be back for 2 weeks. But lately, he's every other week. He didn't quite miss 5 weeks, but he did miss a bigger chunk than he normally would. But when Ellis is out of town, that gives Riley a chance to sit at the main desk. Brett is the one who basically has a regular presence now, and that limits the number of women that they can put at the main desk. But I hope we get back to a place where we can have 2 women on at the same time at the main desk, because we had some great shows in Phase 5 with Miri and Alicia, sure. Tiffany and Miri, Tiffany and Alicia. So it's a dynamic that does work.
And I mean, do you agree that that's just one of the biggest issues with Collider and Schmoes in general, is the lack of female representation? And I mean, there are people that are in the spotlight and we have our favorites, but as far as like the equality, having just as many women present as the men, do you think that is an issue across the board?
It's a definite issue across the board. The ratios are way too imbalanced. I mean, we've got Ken and Jeremy coming. It's going to feel even more imbalanced, especially on the Collider side of things. So they need another all-star over there, that is female, of course. And so, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I know that they're probably way over budget right now. I don't know how much more my buddy Mark Fernandez can throw at this, but with Jeremy in the fold and Ken's contributions, Copster's contributions, obviously that's going to build a return on investment that'll give my buddy Mark Fernandez the chance to explore more female talent.
All right, let me ask you this question, because this involves Sasha, and this involves the fact that Copster is now producing content for Collider. What would you think about if there was a week where Sasha knew that she was going to miss? What would you think about a weekly produced, inserted Sasha's indie picks into the live show? Now, it would work similar to how Copster had his Blu-ray reviews in the middle of the break, but it wouldn't really be a part of the break. It would just sort of be a cutaway to Sasha, and she would have recorded it another day that she was in the studio, maybe Monday on TV Talk, and she did like a 3-minute quick indie picks and let everyone know what movies they should have watched, and then we'd get right back to the show. Do you think there is room for that type of production in the live show, or does it take away from the goal of making it more like Phase 3?
Well, here's the thing. In Phase 5, we did this with Alicia. Certain episodes, she couldn't be there, so she would pre-tape her indie picks and send them in, and then they would air it during the show. However, it did not really work. Most people just kind of tuned out at that point. It really did not have the same effectiveness as Alicia in person. And even though Sasha's a dynamic person, she's got great energy, I don't know if they want to go down that path again, because it really didn't work when they did it with Alicia. They did it a number of times when she couldn't be there, but they wanted to keep the segment regular.
That's why you're here, Brian. That is why you're here, my friend. Let's talk about Beardo. Let's talk let's talk about this guy for a second. So last week was sort of an underwhelming announcement for him joining the show, I thought. I wanted to make this joke last week. Last week, Beardo looked like he was trying his hardest to... I was going to make a joke out of this. It looked like he showed up just to make it a great impression on Kristian, because he was wearing a Saturday Night Live shirt, and he was wearing a Yankees hat, and it just... And I can't remember...
He was offering his Stern password to him.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah, they were talking about how much they love Howard Stern. So it seemed like this guy was just like freakishly being a Kristian fanboy, trying to appeal to Kristian's likes. So this week, we got a little bit, we got a new layer of Beardo. And I don't know much about him at all. I've only seen a couple of the Wanger Show episodes, and he is turning out to be sort of a weirdo. And I don't know if it's because he's named Beardo, because we found that out this week. That was
his nickname on the Wanger Show was the bearded fuck, or that bearded fuck. And yet he comes into this episode knowing that he had that nickname as well as the new Beardo nickname, and he comes in clean shaven. That is a bold move.
What do you think about this guy? He's like intentionally weird and creepy. Like right away, that was his debut. Was just being
first off, everybody wants to say that he looks like Adam Carolla, and I see a little bit of that. But I think he's the spitting image more so of Adam Goldberg from Fargo, from Saving Private Ryan, from Friends, from Entourage. Pull up Adam Goldberg sometime. I think Beardo is more Adam Goldberg than Carolla. There's also a little bit of Toby Kebbell from his Black Mirror days. Toby Kebbell from Black Mirror also has a little bit of Kristian in him. But yeah, Adam Goldberg, whenever I see Beardo, I think Adam Goldberg right away.
I think Carolla is way more spot on, but I can see where you're going with that. Sure. Are you picking up what I'm putting down, though? Did you get these weird vibes? I feel like he's just going to be an enigma.
Look, the guy's nervous. Like, he's understandably nervous, so I'm not going to judge him too hard in his first couple appearances. I am disappointed, though, that my nickname of Oil Spill did not stick. I coined that on Twitter. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to land with any resounding stickiness, if you will. So I thought it was good, though, based on his Twitter handle of BP trademark, which is it just sounds like the official Twitter account for BP.
I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm not judging him at all. I think this is part of an act. I think he's having fun with us, and he's messing with us, and he wants me to talk about this. I think, I said, I think...
No. I just think he's a young, nervous intern. I don't think there's any part of this that is premeditated.
I don't think he's nervous. I thought he was fine on the mic. I thought he was just having fun, and he was a goofy guy. That's how I read it. I think he's messing with us. I
don't think there's anything premeditated or planned or rehearsed. I just think
I'm not saying that either.
I think there's some nervous energy. I don't think he's pulling anything. Maybe I'm interpreting you wrong, but I don't think there's any grand plan to what he's doing.
I'm not saying it's rehearsed. I'm not saying they're telling him to go out there and just be weird. I think that's just part of his personality, and then they're playing it up. I'm not judging him. I'm not saying it's stupid.
You're making it sound like he's pulling, like he's playing out some sort of shtick.
I think he's messing with us. Yeah, I think he's being goofy.
You think he's doing something that's premeditated?
I'm not saying it's rehearsed during the meeting, though. I just think they're playing up this part of him because they know that it's going to be funny and weird and creepy at times. So I don't know. I like it. I think it's funny. And I hope I'm right, because we could be talking about this for the next several weeks anytime he appears on camera. So
either way, even though I would have preferred my nickname of Oil Spill to be applied to him, I'm glad that they did listen to our show last week when I said this guy needs a nickname. He needs a nickname. Every intern has had one. They still have them. It's in the true Howard Stern fashion that everyone on the staff has a nickname. So I like that they gave him one right away. And then, of course, he trolled everybody by shaving his beard for his second show.
Sasha thinks he looks like Justin Theroux. She's out of her mind. Justin Theroux is a gorgeous man.
Yeah, I don't see that at all. But I don't see See, everybody used to say to Corolla that he looks like Gilbert Gottfried, and I don't see Gilbert Gottfried in Brian Perez whatsoever. Again, I see Adam Goldberg, especially when he's clean shaven. Or wait a second, did he shave the beard for the costume? Could that be the reason?
Maybe.
That's got to be it. That's got to be it. He's got to sell his costume.
Maybe.
But it also complicated his new nickname that they applied to him this week. So very strange timing, but it made sense with the costume. So,
what did you think about this strange cutaway to that scene in The Dark Knight that was filled in with RB3's laugh?
Honestly, this is probably the one thing under Cobster's regime that has not worked. Everything else has worked resoundingly well, but I gotta be honest, this one did not work. I've loved every move, every string he's pulled, but for some reason this one did not work. And I'm sorry to everyone involved. I know you guys probably worked really hard on it, but for me, it did not work well.
Yeah, and I don't even think the setup for it was that great either. I don't know if we were...
That's an issue too.
I mean, not that we were supposed to know what was coming, because obviously it was supposed to be a surprise, but I thought the setup was weak, and I think Kristian is the one who did it. And then the video just didn't hit, partially because it didn't even sound like RB3 to me.
Right. I couldn't tell it was him initially, but then on my rewatch, I could tell obviously they were setting RB3 up, but it didn't sound like a natural laugh. It just sounded like he was forcing the laugh out for sake of the recording. So this is the one false step, but Cobster's made 1,000 right steps so far. So I'm not gonna hold this over his head.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about the fact that they went into this episode thinking that it was going to be discussion of horror films, but it ended up being them discussing their own personal ghost stories. What did you think about that quick change-up?
Well, it's not just ghost stories, it's just terrifying experiences, scary stories, creepy stories. And this is the value of the Schmoes Know show, the new title. This allows them, as we've talked about before, to talk about things other than movies. As I've said before, when this show was first started, the Schmoes Know movie show, Mark and Kristian were not working full-time at Collider quite yet, or AMC for that matter. So there was more of a need to talk about movies full-time because they did not have the current gigs they have now. But now that they're all talking about movies all week long, it'd be boring for them to rehash the same points all week about the same movies. That being said, we still get 80% movie content, but I like this episode because we got to know these people in ways that we wouldn't normally if we just stuck to their movie-related tastes. I can only get to know Kristian so well by hearing about how much he loves Rambo or Total Recall. So it's important to hear about their lives, their childhoods, what scares them, what excites them. It's important to hear this kind of stuff because we don't get to hear it that often. So I'm really appreciative of it. The SPR Experiences story about the hole in the closet is unbelievable. It's insane. It's crazy. I hope they make a short original film based on this where Finstock is the one coming out of the hole in the closet as kind of a show-related bit. So great stuff. What'd you think?
I agree. I agree with what you said. I mean, this was the first time. I think this was the Schmoes Know show that had the least to do with movie discussion. And like they threw out such as indie picks, but there was no Bread to the Future. They talked about Walking Dead briefly, and they have their opening, which is essentially just them going back and forth for a little bit. This had the least to do with film, more than any other Schmoes Know show in Phase 6, from what I can recall. And I realized
there's the Game of Thrones one, but yeah.
Okay, well, I realized that
your point is still valid. Sorry.
After all of the Collider content, I realized that I really don't need the Schmoes Know show to be about movies at all. Like this overall, my thought was that this wasn't the greatest. It certainly wasn't my favorite in Phase 6. But this segment in particular spoke to me because I realized that I didn't need them to talk about horror movies because I was just as captivated listening to these people that I love talk about whatever they want to talk about. The fact that they were telling creepy stories and they were so fascinating certainly helped. I didn't really get a read. I stepped away from the YouTube comment or the chat room, excuse me, so I didn't get a read on what everyone else was thinking during this. But you know what? I would certainly be fine, and I know this now. Due to this episode, I would certainly be fine with the Schmoes Know show having very little to do with movies because they are so on top of it everywhere else. I mean, I just think there's no way that they would do it, and I'm not saying that they should because plenty of people want to hear them talk about movies and don't watch Collider or whatever, but I liked it. So I was totally on board for that segment, and I know Kristian made it a point where he was like, he said to himself, we were supposed to be talking about horror movies, but when he said that, I was like, no, wait, please don't go away from this because I want to hear more stories from you guys. So I very much appreciated all of that.
But it's important sometimes to go where the show takes you. Sometimes the show goes in a direction that you didn't plan on, and sometimes the best stuff can come from that. And I like that Kristian let it happen. So yeah, I think once in a while it's important to just let the show go where it's supposed to go. And in this case, we got to hear things about them that we wouldn't normally hear. And some people took issue with that because they're so used to the movie format, but every other week we're going to get 80% movies, if not more. So some people maybe were underwhelmed by this episode. You have said that as well, but I really like this episode. That being said, you know when you want to make a stew or something that has a lot of ingredients, and then you realize you don't have a few of those ingredients and you proceed to make that item anyway? That's kind of what this episode was like, because the Schmoes Know show at its peak, when it's running at its optimal level, everyone is there. You've got the ingredient of Ken, the ingredient of JTE, the ingredient of Brett, the ingredient of Finstock, plus Mark, Kristian, Sasha, Tiffany, whomever, Riley. Add all those ingredients together, you get what the Schmoes Know show is. So when a few of those ingredients are missing, you're going to notice, but you're still going to enjoy what is left because you still have 7 of the 10 ingredients that you love so much. So even if you're missing a few items, you can still appreciate the overall dish itself. So yes, it felt kind of quiet. It felt kind of empty with 4 people missing, but I still very much enjoyed this episode.
And look, I asked you off air Thursday night, do you think they're consciously bringing in less people weekly? And I think we disagree on that, but this was
totally disagree with that.
I think it's possible. I'm not saying that they're consciously doing it. I think it's possible that they're trying to limit, because the Wanger table seems to be more empty every week. But anyway, that's another thing.
Ken was on vacation. JT didn't have a ride. Brett wasn't there. Brett's been rotating of late. Riley was sick, like I said. So 4 people that would usually be there were not there. That's a big void, and you're going to notice it. Those guys would be there if they were available. So I don't think there is a conscious choice to limit who's there. I don't think so at all, especially for an episode like the Halloween special where you want as many people there as possible for the full costume effect, to get as many crazy costumes as possible.
Okay, the point that I was getting to was that, again, this just a quick point. I, at the beginning of the show, realized that this was a skeleton crew. We didn't have Brett, we didn't have Ken, we didn't have Riley. But at the same time, I forgot all about that because I was so intrigued. So it even showed me that even when they have to limit the people or people can't be there, it's still going to be okay, Brian, and I know that now. So I thought with what they had, I thought they did a great job in that section of the show. Now, I want to get into my least favorite part of the show, but before that, I have a question for you. So, in one of Copster's videos that he did this week, I've heard it mentioned before, but it made it relevant this week. He finds Cody in the studio, and Cody is staring at a picture of Dobby. And I realized that Dobby has been brought up several times around Cody, but I have no clue what the connection is. So can you help me out with that?
Well, it's a good thing you asked because Dobby is part of this week's history lesson. So for those who are new to the show, as of episode 201, Cody Hall, aka Upham, used to do an impression of Dobby the house elf from that kids movie franchise Harry Potter. You know who I'm talking about, Snelling?
Oh yeah.
Well, Cody introduced Dobby on episode 187 when Sophia Boutella was on to promote Kingsman. Somehow Kristian talked her into doing the celebrity impression dating game, and that's the first segment where the impression of Dobby debuted. The impression got enough of a response that executive producers Kristian Harloff and Mark Ellis decided to use Cody's Dobby character to lead the breaks for about 8 weeks worth of episodes until episode 200. While some Schmoevillians love Dobby, including Tyler Myers is like the Dobby aficionado. Despite all that, the character was often regarded by other Schmoevillians as the Jar Jar Binks of Schmoeville.
Okay.
Thus, the character was laid to rest as of the big 200 episode. Cody has mentioned Dobby in passing here and there, but you could say that Dobby's official return was this week on Schmoes Know show number 256.
That is fantastic. God, I would have loved to experience that right away. I love that all of that came from one stupid impression. I love it. It makes me appreciate Jar Jar Binks a little bit more too, strangely enough.
I will never say that. I will never concur with you on that. But in hindsight, I'm not sure I appreciated Dobby as much in the moment as I do now. Because going back and doing some of the research for this history lesson, I actually enjoy Dobby quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
So props to Cody, a.k.a. Upham.
Let's get into what brought Dobby there in the first place, which was this costume challenge. So we heard a little bit about this earlier in the week, and my overall thoughts, I thought this, for some reason, the segment was just weird. It just felt weird. It never really felt like it got started. It didn't really feel like it was full of energy. Some people were talking about the lack of music. I thought it was weird to see Ellis by himself. I don't know if that was like a last-minute change because he ruined who he was already, but that wasn't really a part of it. I don't know. I thought the setup and everything was just kind of off, and I wasn't enjoying it as much as I thought I would have. What did you think?
That's the one issue that I have, is that Ellis was by himself at the table, which created this weird look, this weird dynamic. And I kept wondering, when people came out, why didn't they just sit at the table and fill it out once they had introduced their own costume? Why did they have to keep Ellis alone at the table once they had done their walkthrough?
Yeah,
so
because once they came out, he was sort of
there?
Yeah, once they came out, he was sort of interviewing them, and it would have worked much better if they were actually sitting beside him. So I guess maybe the concern was that they would eventually fill up the table, but of course the latest person could have taken over for the person who had been out there the longest, and they could have shuffled and then lined them up. Yeah. So, I like that idea. I'm not sure why they did that. Really, and I'm not saying that Ellis isn't capable. He's certainly capable, but this kind of goes back to what I thought originally, where I thought he was just a little off. And again, for him to just be sitting there by himself, it was weird, and I didn't connect to this segment as much as I wanted to. But as they started rolling out, the guys in the costumes, I mean, it was pretty funny to see who everyone decided to be. I really like. Of course, our winner RB3 is Finstock. I mean, that was great. And
Robert Finstock III.
Yeah.
What did you think of Oil Spill's Lloyd Christmas costume? He was the one that led off.
I thought he was Makuga. I thought the Beardo was Makuga, so it took me a second to realize that it was Dumb and Dumber, but that has to be Makuga's suit. Makuga's worn that, hasn't he?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised given the amount of orange that I'm sure he has in his closet, but I'm just not sure. He's a lot taller than Makuga, so that gives me some reason to question whether it was Makuga's.
The problem, and I could see why this is a great recipe for some humorous moments, but the other problem was that they were supposed to be impersonating their characters, and I didn't think all of them were doing that great of a job. They didn't have to, I guess, because this wasn't the impression game. But that was another reason why I didn't really connect for me, is that they had to improv, and maybe they're not all the best at improving when they're being asked questions from Ellis. But
what did you think of Ace's Vegeta?
I thought it was great. Like, him doing that was awesome. Like, I grew up on Dragon Ball Z. I knew what he was going for. The fact that he kept repeating himself was hilarious. Like, I totally thought he was doing that on purpose. He kept talking about how he's the Prince of all Saiyans. He said that like 3 times. All of that was great. But when you're talking about the costume contest, as soon as he came out, I thought, there's no way he should win this. Because going back to my Batman shirt point, I mean, he was wearing Under Armour. His costume was essentially the wig and then his impression. So he made me laugh, and he was the one who made me laugh the hardest, actually. But in terms of costume contest, there's a reason why he didn't win. That's my take.
I kind of liked Freddy Cobster. For some reason, I kind of like what Cobster was doing. I don't think he should have won, but I still liked what he was doing. I kind of liked Florence Foster Jenkins by Sasha. I kind of dug what she was doing. She obviously prepared for it, and she had some things that she wanted to say already planned, so I dug what she was doing. I'm not sure she needed the Negan bat, but that's beside the point. Kristian's Predator, what'd you think?
It was fine. I thought the costume looked crazy. I loved how he threw in the skeleton and was playing with that during the costume. I thought that was really great. It took me a second to even realize that was Kristian. Part of me thought that it was Makuga for a while.
Until he turned his back, you couldn't really tell who it was. But
yeah,
knowing that Kristian loves Predator, it didn't take long to figure out. But my favorite by far, and this might surprise some people, Josh Makuga.
Me too.
Now, do you watch Peaky Blinders?
I don't, but I know who he's impersonating.
Well, here's the thing. This is the problem. He said he was Tommy Shelby. The problem is he was doing an impression of Jason Statham as Tommy Shelby's brother, Arthur Shelby. He was acting like the brother character of Arthur Shelby. Tommy Shelby is this very soft-spoken leader of the Peaky Blinders gang. So he was more like Arthur, yet he considered himself Tommy, which is so perfect for Makuga, because even though he's acting like Arthur, he wants to be known as the lead, as the center of attention, as the leader of the gang, which is Tommy Shelby. So there's a lot of dynamics coming into play there, because Arthur's got the more dynamic personality, but Tommy's the leader. So it makes sense why he chose Tommy, yet acted like Arthur. But regardless, great costume, great impression, and I was so happy when he came out, because I love Peaky Blinders, one of my favorite shows by far. And Makuga stole the show for me.
I agree completely. That's who I voted for. I thought he absolutely killed it. By far my favorite.
And
so I'm
if
glad
he killed it to someone who hasn't seen the show, that's all the more reason for you to watch the show, because it's even better on the show.
Oh, I'll start watching it right away. As soon as I finish the Pablo Hidalgo interview, I'll start watching Peaky Blinders.
And Battlestar Galactica.
And hate watching The Walking Dead, yes.
You had a chance to just put it in a drawer and not come back to it. You could have just exited at season 4. Anyways, I'll stop.
I wanted to bring it up because I wanted to bring the show full circle as we were wrapping it up here. Wasn't that smart of me? Aren't I a genius?
Fine.
I mean, that's pretty much all I got on the show overall. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite, but it certainly still had some fun moments. Is that all you got on the live show?
I think there was a moment where Ellis said Jack Palance was coached by Rocha as a knock against Rocha's age. Strange factoid, Jack Palance was a patient of my dad. So I'm just throwing that random bit of trivia out there.
Cool.
And actually, that was from the Schmoedown. I'm looking at the wrong notes, so sorry about that, folks, but there you go. I liked the episode overall. I missed some of the characters that we're used to getting, but we got some great story. I mean, the fact that Cobster's mom could have been a victim of the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, is so crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But I mean, imagine if we had to hear them talk about Halloween for the 6th time in show history. We would have missed a story like that.
Exactly.
So embrace change, people. Embrace it.
My 2 favorite quotes from the episode were RB3's quick, "I'm from Compton." That was funny.
And yet the story of the drive-by was in a gated community. He's like, I live in a gated community. And then he talks about how he saw a drive-by go down. So that just added to the hilarity of the moment, even though it wasn't a funny moment when you think about it. But
No.
it kind of stopped everybody in their tracks as they were all telling these kind of creepy, terrifying stories. Oh, question about Makuga. He says his brother and his friends locked him in a basement with Children of the Corn on. Why didn't he just turn the TV off? Like if they locked him in the basement with it on, just turn it off.
Oh, Makuga.
What are we not missing here?
My second favorite quote was actually from him, because it was even funnier after RB3 brought up that he was from Compton. Someone brought up Pittsburgh, and I think part of his story was that it was like a wooded area where he lived, like outside of the city. And he dead serious. His eyes lit up. Someone brought up how weird Pittsburgh was, and he was dead serious, and he goes, "It's a different part of the world for sure." like it was the like he was talking about coming from the same place RB3 had, when clearly he didn't come from the same place that RB3 had. It was just funny. His eyes lit up. Like, Pittsburgh, it's a different part of the world, man. I tell you.
By the way, Ellis told that story of that Oklahoma City hotel that the Spurs players had a ghost story at. That's called the Skirvin Hotel. And I've heard at least 5 other stories from people involved in the NBA that have had their own ghost stories from that place. So that is a known haunted hotel.
Interesting. Awesome. I don't believe in ghosts, but there you go.
And I just want to say, Sasha got a really positive response in the show's comments. I mean, granted, there were some terribly sexist comments that were just absolutely revolting, but for the most part, compared to usual, people really dug what she offered this episode. She told that crazy story about the hole in the closet. People dug her costume. They really liked her on this episode, so I was happy to see a positive The SPR experience for everybody. Lastly, what do you think of this Inner Geekdom Championship that Kristian has been teasing? 5 people, tourney, 5 genre categories, 5 rounds. He's only got 2 people confirmed so far, Ashley Robinson and Hector Navarro. But are you intrigued by this Inner Geekdom Championship?
No, he tweeted today that Jeremy Johns is officially added to that. So he's got 3 of the 5 now. And I think I'm still a little confused by the concept of it overall. But I mean, all of those people in the Schmoedown, the fact that it's something new, I mean, what's there not to be excited about? I think everyone's confused. I've seen people post and ask them about it on Twitter. I don't know if you can help clarify what it is, but down the road,
it's a 5-person tourney based around. It's a 5-person tourney based around specific genre categories, and this is good for those people that may not be strong in the general categories, but might be able to crush in their wheelhouse, be it Star Wars or Marvel or whatever. So I think it could be an interesting wrinkle to all this for certain competitors who may not be strong in the general stuff.
I would like to see the last 2 spots filled by Andre, the Black Nerd. I think he absolutely belongs in that, so hopefully they can get him on. I would also like to see Robert Meyer Burnett. I want to see what else he can do in the Schmoedown. I want to see him do something else aside from the tag stuff. And then any of the newbies, like Carol Warner. I don't know what her geek specialties are per se, or Miss Movies. I don't know if they have anything that they could bring to the table in this, but I'd love to see any of those people contribute to that. It's definitely something to be excited about for sure.
I'm down to watch it. And my last moment that I enjoyed was Ellis's reaction to Kristian's question to Beardo about how he met Cobster. It was such a weird connection. My brother's cousin's best friend? Like, you really got to think about that for a minute. But Ellis then chimes in, who gives a fuck how they met? So great moment. One of the highlight moments in this episode, just the banter in that moment. But that's it for me.
Everyone over there at Collider and Schmoes Know, thank you so much for another great week of content. We love you guys so much, and hopefully we tell you that more often. I almost had a Colin Cowherd moment where I had a giant pause in between what I was saying. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to us, guys. We love your comments. We love your tweets. And I'm going to be more active in the Facebook group, so I will see you guys over there as well. We will hang out and talk about Schmoes. It's going to be great. If you're listening to this podcast through the podcast feed on iTunes or your favorite podcast app, just know that we're also on the SK Podcast YouTube channel. That's where we can talk and hang out. If you're listening to us on YouTube, just know we're also available in podcast form if you want to listen to us on the road and you don't have an unlimited data plan that lets you listen to YouTube for that long. Anyway, Brian Davids, thank you for joining me this week. Where can the people find you on the internet?
You guys can follow me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at Film Schlubs, wherever podcasts are found. And filmschlubspodcast.com. I talk TV, film, and I interview some great people in the industry. So that's it for me this week.
Perfect. Guys, you can follow me on Twitter at WhatUpSnell. I just kicked off my brand new podcast with my friend Jay called Sight and Sound. Again, to win Star Trek Beyond on Blu-ray, just like our Sight and Sound Facebook page, you can find by searching Sight and Sound or facebook.com/sightsoundpod. Just like it, and your chance to win the Blu-ray. And rate and review Sight and Sound on iTunes. And let me know that you're coming from Schmoeville, and that'll help you enter your chance to win a Schmoes Know shirt of your choice from the TeePublic store. Thank you so much for hanging out with us again. Until next week, I'm Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids.
Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll help you stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Collider.